May 28th, Hoyt Road south to Route 22. We are back in New York after that washout Easter weekend. We were here in October 2009 when we completed Connecticut and crossed the Connecticut and New York state line on the AT. Dave had dropped me off again on Hoyt Road, and I was heading south on the AT. He drove over to Route 22 and was heading north. I started off in a wet area with a swamp, and I came to a great display of wildflowers. Some I did not know and would have to look up when I got home. I reached Dual Hollow Brook with some people swimming in the water. By the way, it is over 80 degrees today, and it is very humid out here. It is the second heat wave of 2011. There was a tall wire fence here that went across the brook with no trespassing signs on it. I reached a two-logged bridge that went over the brook and passed through some hardwoods before I reached Dual Hollow Road. After crossing the dirt road, I climbed up and reached an interesting old water pump. It was a hand pump style water pump. Shortly after I reached Willie's Shelter, which was right on the trail, it was a very old log-style lean-to with no bunk beds and a particle board floor. There was a large stone fire pit, a picnic table, a tent platform, and a very old outhouse. It was in a nice area, however, there were so many mosquitoes out here that I did not stay long. I crossed Leather Hill Road, another dirt road, and climbed up more to Hammersley Ridge, which is part of the Pauling Nature Reserve. A nice breeze was picking up here, and I could smell the wild flowers in the air, and there was wild geraniums everywhere up here. It was a very humid day, and I was constantly stopping at every small stream to wet my bandana. Did I mention that it was over 80 degrees? I met up with Dave on the ridgeline after I had passed a yellow blazed trail. It was such a happy moment when we met on the trail. We miss each other so much when we have to hike separate to make mileage on the trail. He had told me that he had a nasty climb up, and that where he started the trail, he had gone through a tall grassy field, and that the trail was narrow. I hate tall grass that you have to walk through it, and I am always afraid to get ticks on me. We sat here and ate our lunch before we had to split up again. He warned me of a junction on the trail that is not well marked where he had got confused to which way the trail went. However, he did pick the right path. He showed me a video of the area so that I would not go the wrong way. I had seen a lot of thru hikers on the trail today, but I had thought that it was too early in the year for them to be in New York. Maybe they were section hiking this piece. The hill down to the camper was hard and my knees were beginning to hurt pretty badly. The field walk was horrible with the tall grass and the heat. I had felt hot, sticky, and itchy most of the day. However, I did see a lot of wildflowers here. I reached the camper and drove over to Hoyt Road, where we camped the night in the AT parking lot. It was a quiet night, and I could smell the skunk cabbage during the night. The trail today had a nice treadway with not much rocks over Hammersley Ridge, with a lot of big old oak trees. We did not hear or see any wildlife today. It was even too hot for them to be out. May 29th, Route 20 north to West Dover Road. Dave dropped me off on West Dover Road. There is a giant oak tree at the start of the trail. I have never seen one so big. The Dover oak tree is designated the largest oak tree on the Appalachian Trail and is over 20 feet in diameter and 114 feet tall when last measured in 2012 when it was added to the New York State Big Tree Registry. I headed onto the trail and my first mile was in an open field walk with tall grass. It was humid with no wind and I was baking in the sun. Gnats and mosquitoes were all over me. I had on some natural bug balm. However, it just seemed to excite them even more. The trail had bordered the field and the woods, but stayed in the grass most of the way up. There was lots of wildflowers and mud that had some loose wooden planks that had been strategically placed to get you over it, but they splashed in the mud when you stepped on them. I reached a view from the top of the field. The climb up felt big when you are climbing it in the heat and the humidity, and I had a nice view of the farm below and a view of West Mountain that I had descended in April. I finally went into the woods and the bugs had got even worse. I met up with Dave and he told me that he had left his keys and his backpack in the truck. He only had his MP3 player and his video camera with him. I shared some of my water with him and I gave him my bandana because he had also left his hat in the truck. He loved the bandana because it had peace signs that were purple and pink. He had put it on his head to keep the bugs off his head. I had put some of my bug balm on his ears, and it actually seemed to bring the bugs to him instead of repelling them. I left the balm at the trailhead so that it would torture the other hikers and would please the bugs. I climbed up Corbin Hill and then descended to a big bridge with a long boardwalk that went over the swamp. The swamp is not a nice place to walk through on a humid 90 degrees day. However, the plant life inside the swamp is always interesting. I had seen a through hiker with his family, with two preppy girls in new white sneakers that were splashing through on the muddy old planks. New planks were being built to replace them. The heavy-set hiker was telling his heavy-set wife how he had carried his big backpack through the 100 miles wilderness in Maine. It seemed like it was kind of a strange place to meet his family on this hot and humid Memorial Day. He did not really look like a through hiker. However, they had flew past me, so they were in better shape than I was. I came out to a railroad track. The Appalachian Trail Station is a commuter rail stop on the Metro North Railroad's Harlem Line, serving campers and hikers destined for the Appalachian Trail in Pawling, New York. It is the only rail station directly located on the Appalachian Trail. Trains stop on weekends and holidays only. Same-day Stormville Road north to Route 55. I reached Route 20 and drove over to pick up Dave, and then we drove over to Stormville Road where I will be heading north. It is our second hike on the AT today. Dave will drive over to Route 55 where we had camped in April, and he will be heading south. As soon as I stepped onto the trail, I could hear Interstate 84, as it is right next to the road that I was dropped off on. After I passed the trailhead sign, I had met 3 young guys. One of them was singing some kind of religious song, and he had a Jewish accent. I went over Depot Hill and reached Mount Egbert, in which the area had evidence of a past glacial activity, with scars, striations, and glacial erratic boulders that were scattered across the landscape. This area I had to climb over and between lots of boulders before I reached a rocky ledge. I reached Morgan Stewart's shelter, which was right on the trail. Some hikers' gear was in the shelter, but no one was around. It looked more like weekend hiker were staying here. These shelters in New York seem to get a lot of weekend hikers that stay in them because they are so close to the road. I met up with Dave after I left the shelter. It was so hot and humid out, and Dave looked tired from the heat. Even the rocks that we sat on during our break felt hot. I continued to hike on the rocks after I left Dave and stopped at a couple of streams to soak my bandana. Dave had told me that he did not see any water on his section. I guess that he did not see them. I saw some more backpackers that had looked like they were ready to pack down for the day because of the heat. I crossed Depot Hill Road, a dirt road and then a stream with a nice bridge before I crossed Old Route 55, another dirt road, and then I finally came out to Route 55.